Blood is thicker than water. That's the phrase they used to shape your thinking. You were taught that family is your ultimate safe place, the one circle that will always protect your secrets, accept your flaws, and support your dreams without condition. It sounds comforting. It is also incomplete. The closer people are to you, the more data they hold on you, and proximity changes how power works. The people who raised you often feel entitled to access, to influence, and sometimes to control. They don't always see your boundaries as healthy limits. They may read them as rejection. There are specific kinds of information you should handle carefully around family. Share the wrong details, and you don't just risk conflict. You hand over leverage that can be used against you, sometimes unintentionally. Let them feel they know you, but don't give away the full blueprint of how you operate. First, your exit architecture. Be selective about revealing your long-term ambitions, the real scale of your financial progress, and especially any plan that makes you fully independent. Many families want you to succeed, but within a familiar frame. Family systems tend to stabilize themselves by assigning roles: the responsible one, the rebel, the helper, the underachiever. When you start breaking out of that role, it can unsettle the system. If you openly declare that you're building significant wealth or planning a major life shift that reduces dependence, you might expect support. Often you'll get concern instead. Are you sure that's safe? You've changed. We just don't want you to fail. It's not always malicious. Often it's anxiety about losing the version of you they recognize. But that anxiety can still limit you. So move with discretion. Share results when they're real, not plans when they're fragile. Build quietly. Second, the map of your wounds. Be careful about exposing your deepest insecurities, old traumas, and unresolved resentments to people who were part of those experiences. The modern idea that full honesty always leads to healing sounds ideal, but in practice, not everyone has the capacity to respond with insight and accountability. In conflict, people often reach for whatever lands hardest. If they know exactly where you're sensitive, they may hit that spot, sometimes without even realizing the damage. That's why your deepest healing work belongs in safe, skilled spaces: therapy, coaching, private reflection, not in emotionally charged family dynamics. You can be open without being exposed. Offer context, not raw vulnerability. Third, the inner details of your romantic life. Don't turn your family into a running commentary on your partner. Venting in the heat of conflict feels relieving, but it creates a lasting impression. You might reconcile. They often won't. Over time, those one-sided snapshots shape their view of your partner and can quietly erode your relationship. Keep your partnership as a primary unit. Resolve issues directly. If you need outside help, choose neutral professionals, not invested relatives. Present a consistent, respectful front. Fourth, your evolving beliefs. As you grow, your worldview will change. Career paths, religion, politics, lifestyle. You don't need to announce every shift or argue every difference at the dinner table. Deeply held beliefs aren't changed by debate, especially when they're tied to identity. You can live your values without turning every interaction into a referendum. Choose your battles. Protect your energy. Fifth, your financial specifics. Treat your exact savings, emergency funds, and investments as private. When people know you have a cushion, expectations can shift. Requests, sometimes framed as urgent or emotional, become more likely. You can still be generous and supportive, but from a place of choice, not pressure. Maintain clarity between genuine emergencies and everyday responsibilities. Boundaries around money preserve both your stability and the relationship. Sixth, the graveyard of your past mistakes. There's a strong human urge to confess everything and be fully known, but not every audience is equipped to hold your worst chapters with context and fairness. Disclosing serious past errors can permanently alter how some family members see you, especially if their image of you is fixed. If you need to process guilt or make amends, do it in spaces designed for that work. Let your current actions speak louder than old confessions. 7th, your awareness of the system. As you learn about psychology and patterns, you'll start noticing dynamics, roles, guilt loops, triangulation. The temptation to call it out directly is strong. Usually it backfires. Systems protect themselves. If you try to diagnose the whole family, you risk becoming the problem in their narrative. A more effective approach is quiet clarity. Notice the pattern. Don't announce it. Set boundaries calmly. Decline invitations into drama. Respond without escalation. You keep your advantage by not turning insight into confrontation. When your boundaries are consistent, people adjust, whether they agree with you or not. This isn't about cutting family off or treating them like enemies. It's about managing closeness with wisdom. When you regulate what you share and how you engage, you reduce friction. Interactions become lighter. You can show up with patience because your core is protected. You stop expecting them to be everything, perfectly understanding, perfectly aligned, and accept them as they are. That acceptance, paired with clear boundaries, creates a stable kind of peace. You move from seeking validation to directing your own life. They live their reality. You build yours. The borders are firm. The relationship remains respectful. That's not coldness, that's maturity. And it leads to a final question worth sitting with. If you need this level of clarity to function well within your own family, what beliefs about unconditional connection need to be updated so you can live freely and honestly? Now, this is where real mastery begins. Because setting boundaries is easy, but holding them, that's the real game. Most people reach awareness. They start seeing the patterns, they understand what's happening around them, and then they still repeat the same mistakes. Why? Because knowing and executing are two different levels. Now you move to the next phase. Principle 1. Distance without drama. You don't make announcements, you don't create conflict, you don't stage an exit. You simply become less available over time. Fewer calls, fewer visits, less emotional involvement. If they ask, the answer is simple. I've been busy. No long explanations. The more you explain, the more you invite debate. Silence is your strategy. Principle 2. Controlled presence. When you're around them, be physically present but emotionally regulated. You can talk, laugh, participate, but your core stays protected. You don't react to every comment. You don't internalize every opinion. You're no longer absorbing everything. You're observing it. Principle 3. Pattern recognition. You can now see who uses guilt, who plays the victim, who manipulates. But awareness is not a cue to react. It's a cue to stay composed. The moment you react, you step back into their game. When you don't, the pattern starts losing power on its own. Principle 4. Energy protection. Your energy is limited and family dynamics can drain it fast. After interactions, reset yourself. Go for a walk, train, sit alone, clear your head. You're not being antisocial. You're maintaining your internal state so no one else controls it. Principle 5. No emotional negotiations. When pressure or guilt is applied, you don't negotiate your boundaries. You respond simply, I can't do that. No justification, no long reasoning. The more you explain, the more they try to change your mind. Principle 6. Selective honesty. Not every truth needs to be shared. You can be honest without being exposed. Give a controlled version of the truth, enough to maintain the relationship, not enough to give away leverage. Principle 7. Build your own system. If you only distance yourself but don't build a new life, you'll feel empty and get pulled back. You need your own environment, your work, your goals, your circle, your direction. Your new system stabilizes you. Principle 8. Respect without submission. You don't need to disrespect them, but you also don't need to obey everything. You can be respectful and independent at the same time. That balance is maturity. Principle 9. Play the long game. This doesn't change overnight. Roles shift slowly. Dynamics adjust over time. Stay consistent. Consistency is power. Principle 10. Internal validation. You no longer depend on their approval. Your decisions come from you. The moment you stop needing validation, you become difficult to control. And here's the final truth. You're not trying to defeat your family, you're trying to protect yourself. This is not rebellion, it's evolution. You're not escaping, you're upgrading. And the day you can hold your boundaries without guilt, the day you can say no without fear, the day you can stay calm without explaining yourself, that's the day you're truly free. If you made it this far, comment, "I protect my peace." And remember, this is just the beginning. The next level is even more dangerous, where you don't just protect your peace, you control the game. Now it goes even deeper, because this is no longer about just protecting yourself. This is about becoming someone who cannot be moved, read, or manipulated at all. This is where you transition from defense to silent control. Principle 21. Identity locking. Most people shift their identity based on who they're around. That makes them predictable and easy to influence. You don't do that anymore. Your identity stays stable no matter the environment. You don't adjust your core to fit the room. The room adjusts to your presence. When your identity is fixed, manipulation loses its entry point. Principle 22. Emotional economy. You treat your emotions like a currency, not something you spend freely. Every reaction costs you. Every emotional outburst leaks power. So you invest your emotions only where there is value. Everything else gets neutrality. People quickly learn they cannot afford your reaction anymore. Principle 23. Strategic unpredictability. Humans feel safe when they can predict you. The moment you become unpredictable in your responses, not irrational but controlled and varied, you disrupt their expectations. Sometimes you respond, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you engage, sometimes you withdraw. This forces others to constantly reassess you, and in that uncertainty, you hold the advantage. Principle 24. Psychological distance. Even when you're physically close, you maintain mental separation. You listen, but you don't absorb. You engage, but you don't internalize. This creates an invisible barrier. Nothing reaches your core unless you allow it. That's where real strength lives. Principle 25. Detached observation. You begin to see interactions like a strategist, not a participant. Instead of asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" you ask, "What pattern is playing out here?" This shift alone removes emotional weight. You stop taking things personally and start reading them accurately. Principle 26. Controlled access. Not everyone gets the same version of you. Some people get your time, fewer get your energy, and almost no one gets your inner world. Access is earned, not given. When people realize they cannot easily reach you, they start respecting your space. Principle 27. Calm dominance. You don't raise your voice to prove a point. You don't argue to win. Your calmness becomes your authority. When everyone else gets louder, you get quieter, and that contrast alone puts you in control of the frame. Principle 28. Reaction removal. You remove the automatic link between stimulus and response. Something happens, but you don't immediately react. You pause. That pause is where your power lives. Because in that space, you choose your response instead of being driven by it. Principle 29. Self-sourced stability. Your mood is no longer dependent on external validation. You don't need approval to feel secure. You don't need attention to feel valued. You generate your own stability internally, and that makes you extremely difficult to shake. Principle 30. Absolute detachment. This is the final state. You are present, but not entangled. You care, but you are not controlled. You can walk away without emotional collapse. You can stay without losing yourself. Nothing owns your reaction anymore. And that's what makes you untouchable. At this level, people stop trying to manipulate you, not because they respect you, but because it simply doesn't work. They test you once, maybe twice, and then they move on. Because there is no return on investment, no reaction, no control, no leverage. And here is the truth most people never reach. You don't win by overpowering others. You win by becoming someone who cannot be pulled into their game. Silence becomes your strategy. Detachment becomes your freedom. Control becomes your identity. And when all three align, you don't chase power. You embody it. If you reach this point, understand, you're no longer operating at a normal level. You're operating with awareness most people will never develop. Comment, "I control myself," if you feel the shift. And remember, this is not the end. The next level is even more precise, where you don't just become untouchable, you become invisible to manipulation itself. If this didn't just inform you, but change the way you see people, power, and yourself, then don't scroll past it. Most people will hear this, feel it for a moment, and go right back to being controlled. You're not most people. Lock it in. Hit like so this reaches someone who's still trapped in the same patterns. Subscribe to Silent Authority because here we don't give motivation, we build mental dominance. And if you're serious about leveling up beyond surface level content, step into the next tier, where the real strategies, the uncensored insights, and the deeper psychological frameworks are waiting. And if you're serious about leveling up beyond surface level content, step into the next tier, where the real strategies, the uncensored insights, and the deeper psychological frameworks are waiting. Comment, "I control myself," if you're done being reactive and ready to operate with precision. Stay sharp, stay unreadable, and remember, the one who controls himself controls the game.